I've spent sleepless nights wondering why it felt like nothing was changing. I read, studied, planned, but when I looked at my life, it was still the same as always. It was like I was stuck in an old version of myself, repeating the same patterns dressed up in new clothes, until it finally hit me. There's no room for a new life when you insist on dragging around an old identity. And I didn't need more willpower. I needed courage to kill the old version of me and rewrite my story. This isn't a light process. It's uncomfortable to let go of what's familiar, even when it no longer serves you. But that discomfort is what brought me here. I realized there was no way I could arrive in 2026 as the same woman who entered 2025. If I wanted a different life, I had to be different. And that choice couldn't wait. If this topic resonates with you, hit the like button, subscribe, and come along with me, because I'm going to show you the real steps I used to bury my old self and build an entirely new life. Step 1. Recognize your old version without romanticizing it. The first shock I had was realizing how much I still tried to justify my old self. I used to tell myself, I'm like this because life made me tough. I react this way because it's what I learned. I'm not growing because I didn't have the same chances. And while those lines sounded true, they only kept me stuck in the same place. It was like I was clinging to my pain as an excuse not to change. The day I chose to look without romanticizing was both freeing and painful. Because recognizing isn't about blaming myself, it's about stopping the self-deception. I had to face the fact that this version of me survived, but she didn't thrive. She repeated cycles, accepted crumbs, settled for less than she wanted, and admitting that wasn't easy. But it was necessary. This version isn't a villain. She did what she could. She got me here. But what got me here won't get me further. So I had to name my repetitions. Shine a light on every automatic choice. No sugarcoating, no justifying. When you recognize your old self, you take away her power to run your present. And only then can you make room for something new to be born. Comment. I recognize my old self without romanticizing it. If you've also decided to stop justifying old patterns and step fully into your transformation. Step 2. Clearly choose the woman you're going to bury. I discovered it's not enough to just say, I want to change my life. As long as I didn't name what needed to die, I kept feeding that version without even realizing it. So I sat down with myself in silence and made a brutally honest list. What behaviors sabotage me? What thoughts paralyze me? What excuses do I repeat every time life asks more of me? It wasn't easy to write, because in some way, each old pattern felt like part of my identity. The woman who got used to accepting less, the one who spends without thinking, the one who says yes when she really wanted to say no. But then I understood. That wasn't me. It was just the version I built to survive. So I made a conscious choice. That woman will be buried. Not with anger, but with gratitude. She protected me when I didn't know what else to do. But now she's a weight. And there's no prosperity when you insist on carrying who you've already outgrown. Bringing clarity to who you need to bury is an act of courage. Because from that moment on, you can't pretend you don't know anymore. You look your old self in the eyes and say, thank you for getting me here. But from now on, you're not the one who lives. Comment. I know who I need to bury. If you've also identified which patterns can no longer have space in 2026. Step 3. Create a symbolic ritual to mark the death of your old self. I realized that just recognizing my old self wasn't enough. I was still carrying her habits like a shadow. And that's when I understood. I needed a symbolic ritual. Something that would mark the end of that identity, so that my body and mind knew there was no turning back. What I did might seem simple, but it was profound. I took a blank sheet of paper and wrote down everything I no longer wanted to carry. Every pattern, every belief, every excuse. And then I burned that paper. I watched as the flames turned into ashes all the weight I had been holding on to. It felt like I was burying a part of myself. That physical act gave me a reality check. It wasn't just a thought. It was a farewell. And every time the old version tried to come back, I remembered the fire. The period I chose to put at the end of that story. There are no rules for how to do this ritual. You can write, tear, say it out loud, or even create a symbol that represents your goodbye. What matters is making it clear to yourself that old identity is dead. That was the day I felt for the first time real space to be reborn. Comment. I'm burying my old self. If you're also going to create a symbolic milestone to close the cycle that can no longer come with you. Step 4. Design the identity of the woman you will become before 2026. When I buried my old self, I was left staring at a blank page. And that was one of the scariest moments of my life. Because deep down, I realized I had always known what I didn't want to be, but I had never stopped to clearly define who I wanted to become. So I did the exercise that changed everything. I took a notebook and wrote, in detail, the identity of the woman I wanted to be in 2026. It wasn't just about money or external achievements. It was about how I wanted to think, act, relate to myself and to others. It was about my stance in the world. I wrote, I am the woman who honors the promises she makes to herself. I am the woman who can say no without guilt. I am the woman who treats money as an ally. I am the woman who lives with purpose, not on autopilot. By putting it on paper, something inside me realigned. It was as if I had given this new version a face and a voice. And from that day on, every choice became a test. Is this aligned with the identity I want to embody in 2026? That clarity gave me direction. Because when you know who you want to be, it becomes easier to let go of everything that no longer matches you. Comment, I already know who I'll be in 2026. If you're also ready to design, in detail, the identity of your new self. Step 5. Build daily habits that confirm your new identity. It's useless to write down who you want to be in 2026 if, day to day, you keep acting like your old self. That's what I realized right after designing my new identity. I needed concrete proof, small but consistent actions that showed me I was already living as this new version. I started simple. If my new identity was a woman who honors her word, then I couldn't make promises I wasn't going to keep. If she was a woman with financial clarity, then I needed to face my accounts regularly, without avoidance. If she was a woman who takes care of herself, then self-care had to become a routine, not a luxury. These small habits became the invisible bricks of my new life. And with each repetition, my brain registered, this is the new reality. That's how I started to grow deep roots. The most powerful realization was that I didn't need huge revolutions. I just needed to repeat, every day, the things that sustained my new identity. And little by little, what once felt like effort became natural. What once felt strange became identity. Today, I know my life changed not because of one big event, but because of the quiet choices I upheld every single day. Comment, my habits confirm who I am. If you've also realized that every repetition is a signature of your new self. Step 6. Shield your energy against everything that tries to pull you back. After I started sustaining new habits, I realized the biggest battle wasn't with myself. It was with the environment around me. People who found my choices strange. Advice disguised as concern that pulled me backward. Invitations that, if I accepted, would make me stumble into the same old patterns. That's when I understood. If I didn't shield my energy, I would end up giving in. And giving in, little by little, is going back to square one. So I decided to create filters. Not everything, or everyone, deserves access to the woman I'm building. I learned to say no without guilt. To step away from conversations that drained me. To mute notifications that stole my focus. And most importantly, to intentionally choose who I let into my closest space. Shielding your energy isn't about closing yourself off from the world. It's about opening only to what strengthens your journey. It's about protecting your process until it's so deeply rooted that nothing external can sway you. At first, it may feel like loneliness, but with time you realize it's freedom, because no one else can carry your new identity for you. Only you know the price of what you're building. Today, my energy is my most valuable asset, and I won't trade it for anything that makes me regress. Comment, my energy is sacred. If you've also chosen to guard your transformation and stop negotiating with distractions disguised as affection. Step 7. Rewrite your relationship with money as part of your new life. I realized it was useless to create a new identity if, when it came to money, I was still the same as always. I was still afraid to check my bank statement, still spending to soothe emotions, still seeing money as either an enemy or a burden, and without noticing, my old version was hiding right there. That's when I decided to rewrite my relationship with money. I understood that money isn't a villain, nor a savior. It's a tool. It doesn't define me, but it does reveal my choices. And if I wanted to be unrecognizable in 2026, I had to stop running from that truth. I started creating new rituals. Every week, I reviewed my finances. Not as punishment, but as self-care. I began setting aside money before spending, instead of hoping something would be left over. And I turned every financial decision into a reflection of my new identity. At first, it was uncomfortable. I felt small in front of the numbers. But over time, I realized it wasn't about big amounts. It was about posture. The respect I gave money was the respect I gave myself. Today, I don't spend to prove anything. I invest to confirm who I am. And every financial choice reminds me that my old self is long gone. Comment, money is a tool for my new life. If you've also decided to stop running and start using your resources as building blocks. Step 8. Create rituals of presence to keep your vision alive. What challenged me the most wasn't starting. It was continuing. In the first days, everything felt exciting. New notes, new ideas, new habits. But after a few weeks, the motivation faded. Routine pulled me back, and my old self tried to sneak in. That's when I realized I needed rituals of presence, moments where I consciously reminded myself of who I was choosing to become. I created simple practices that changed the way I walked through life. I wrote down, every day, one sentence that represented my new identity. I visualized for a few minutes what it felt like to live the life I was building. I spoke out loud the decisions I wanted to sustain. These rituals kept me grounded even when nothing seemed to be changing on the outside. They reminded me that transformation is root before it is fruit, and that I wasn't wasting time. I was laying foundations. Today, I see that these gestures weren't just symbolic. They were structural, because they gave me strength on days when motivation disappeared. They gave me clarity on days of doubt, and they kept alive the flame of the woman I want to be. If I had waited for the world to remind me of my vision, I would have quit. But by reminding myself every day, I kept going. Comment: I feed my vision every day. If you've also realized that consistency is born from small rituals that reconnect you with who you've chosen to be. Step 9. Take full responsibility. No more excuses. For a long time, I felt like a victim of circumstances. It was easy to point outward and say, I don't have support. The country doesn't help. Nobody understands me. Those sentences gave me relief for a few seconds, but in reality, they only made me weaker. Because while I blamed others, I was handing them the power over my life. The turning point came when I understood. I may not be to blame for what happened to me, but I'm fully responsible for changing the course. Responsibility is not punishment, it's freedom. It means that from the moment I take control, no one else can decide for me. I began practicing this truth in everything. If I didn't have extra money, instead of complaining, I reviewed my expenses. If I didn't have results, instead of blaming the world, I reviewed my actions. If I felt stuck, instead of waiting for someone to rescue me, I created my own movements. This wasn't easy, because taking responsibility means facing your own flaws head-on, but it also means embracing your own power. And that's how I realized my new identity could only be born when I stopped negotiating with excuses. Today, nothing external defines who I am or where I'll go. I'm the one who decides, and that's lighter than any excuse I've ever told myself. Comment: I am 100% responsible for what I build. If you've also chosen to drop the excuses and take the driver's seat of your own life. Step 10. Hold your decision firm even when nothing seems to work. At the beginning of my transformation, I imagined everything would happen quickly, that by changing habits and thoughts, my life would instantly reflect this new version. But it wasn't like that. There were days when it seemed like nothing was moving, even though I was doing everything right. And on those days I almost went back. But then I realized something. Transformation doesn't happen at the speed of my anxiety, but at the consistency of my decision. It's not about harvesting in 1 week. It's about planting every day, even when the soil looks dry. I remember mornings when I repeated my affirmations, and at night I asked myself, does this even make sense? But when I looked closely, I noticed that even if invisible, something inside me was already changing. I was steadier, more aware, more selective, and that was proof that the new version was already alive, even if the fruits hadn't appeared yet. That's when I decided quitting is not an option. I can adjust, pause, reflect, but never abandon. Because every time I uphold my decision in the dark days, my roots grow deeper, and deep roots resist any storm. Today, I understand it's not about immediate results. It's about loyalty to who I've decided to be, and that loyalty is worth more than any external applause. Comment: I hold my decision even in silence. If you've also realized that consistency is the bridge between who you are and who you will be in 2026, if there's one thing I've learned in this process, it's that there is no true transformation without farewell. For a new life to begin, the old one must die. And that takes courage, because the old version is comfortable, familiar, known, even if it hurts. But if you don't have the courage to bury who you've already outgrown, you'll stay stuck in the cycle you swore to abandon. Looking back at my journey, I see it wasn't big events that transformed me. It was the silent decisions, recognizing without romanticizing, choosing who I needed to bury, creating rituals of presence, shielding my energy, taking responsibility, and holding my decision even when it felt pointless. These invisible choices were the bricks that built the new woman I am. And when I think of 2026, I don't just see a calendar. I see a milestone, a line between who I was and who I chose to become. Because I don't want to arrive there repeating 2025. I want to arrive unrecognizable, not to others, but to myself. The question is, will you wait for another year to repeat itself, or will you rewrite your life now? Comment, I buried my old self, if you've also decided to close this cycle and make room for the life you truly deserve to live. And of course, if this content struck a chord with you, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and share it with another woman who also needs to kill her old self before 2026.